Right. We're learning now the conclusion of the Torah portion, this week's Torah portion, which is called Bachukotai. Bachukotai. And what we're reading now from a book which is called Likuti Torah, which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, first Rebbe of Chabad some 250 years ago. And in it contains the basically the teachings of Moshiach. It's called Torah HaMashiach. So we're going to look at getting a little bit of a look at the world from a point of view using terms which we usually never use in day-to-day life, because that's what the Mashiach is going to do. Is going to reveal new, new importance and new treasures which are hidden in every detail of the world, and especially in the Torah, and how amazingly unique and wonderful and blessed and important the Jewish people are to the whole world, because our job is to improve the whole world by teaching everybody what God is, seeing everybody is new. You see, make everything new and important and fresh and godly, alive. God is life. So here we go. So it says, this week's Torah reading seems though to be exactly the opposite of this message. This week's Torah reading has all these curses in it that the Jews will get if they don't do what God wants, because they're so important. So it has all these warnings and threats that God is going to do to the Jewish people. and and finally, it says in the end of all these threats, there's 49 of them. We went over them yesterday in the afternoon class. So it finally ends up and it says, these are the, let's see, we can get this, our pointer here, our magic pointer. It says, these are the statutes, the laws, and the directives, the Torahs, whatever that God gave between him and the Jewish people. So what type of laws? And there's no laws over there. There's just a bunch of curses. And it's saying, it's making certain promises. It says, even though I'm going to punish you and you're going to get punished, but I still love you, Jewish people, and I'm going to bring you all back to Israel and everything. But there still is no laws there. What type of laws are there? And statutes and things. So the Rebbe says, okay, you want to understand this. First, I'm doing a little bit of a summary of what we did. So it says, you want to understand this? Well, but right in the beginning of this week's Torah portion, it says like this. Please, if you, God is requesting from us, if only you will go in my statutes and my commandments, this means learning the Torah, and my commandments you will observe, and you will do them. So the Rebbe said, this is referring to, we're leaving the questions that we asked for a moment. And it says, in order to understand these questions, you have to have sort of a reset. You have to have a new way of looking at things. It says, in the beginning of the Torah portion, it says, these are the statutes, the Torah, the whatever it is, the Torah, the laws, the directives. And this, as the Rebbe, refers to three things. That refers to thought. Thinking about ideas of the Torah. Understanding God. Meditating, contemplating, considering what is God. Ve'et mitzvotai tishmru, that's talking about speech. The best way to preserve, tishmru means to preserve. The best way to preserve any sort of awareness that you have of God, that you attained by means of this thought, that you've been thinking about God and how God is one, and how God creates all being, and he creates us, and he gave the Torah and took the Jews out of Egypt with the Torah, to receive the Torah. And in other words, that God is involved in the world. All these ideas that you had, how do you preserve them? By saying words of Torah. When you say words of Torah, this preserves this awareness of God that you had. I'm just doing what we said before. Okay, now we're up to the third thing. And it says, and do them. So that we have thought about God, And then we have speaking about God, namely saying the words of Torah, saying the Mishnah, saying the laws. And then after that, it says, Va'asitam. Okay, let's do a little bit of the previous we said. Like it says, I will put my Torah in your mouth. If the Torah is not just in your mind, but also in your mouth, you say the words of Torah. Simply to learn Torah, words of Torah, say Psalms, say anything you want to, but here he's talking about more the ideas, the Mishnah, things like that. Nitfas and nitmamet, that's all over. When a person speaks the words of Torah, then it becomes grasped and verified by him, this amuna, this faith in the oneness of God. Be'emet lamito, in a true way. V'lo dimyonot shava, and not false, imagination. Like the rabbis say, ein agaliut mitkabsot, that the mitkansot, the exile of the Jewish people, will not be gathered together, el except b'zchut mishnayot, but only because of the merit of the laws that they say, b'china dibur, speaking the words of Torah. Like it says, gam yitnu b'goyim, even if you are among the non-Jews, I will gather you all together. Perish. What does it mean? Even though that the Jewish people are among the non-Jews. What does it mean among the non-Jews? There's physically among the non-Jews, and then there's also spiritually among the non-Jews, even though that you are in exile, and the Jewish people, no matter where you are, no matter how far away a Jew gets from God, Shechinah Imam, God's presence is with them. That's what that's what the sentences says. Al Ma'avdal, or it's why has the land of Israel been lost? Al Bittul Torah, because Jews did not learn and say the words of the Torah. Al Yadei Bittul Torah, by means of wasting your time and not expending any energy for learning the Torah. Shu B'chin is Dibur Hashem, to speak the words of God, namely the Torah. Of the Emunah, there's lost the earth, the land of Israel. Doesn't necessarily mean the physical land of Israel, even though the Mashiach will bring everybody to the physical land of Israel. But also land means humility, faith. This is the level which is called, God said, the earth is my footstool, my my place where you put your feet on. It says God has, the king has this thing where his royal thorn, the royal throne that he sits upon, and he puts his feet, which is the lowest part of him, on this thing called a footstool. So the chair that God sits in, that's the spiritual words. The footstool, that's the physical earth, and in our personality, that's referring to faith. The lowest aspect of our personality is faith in God. Why? Because we're saying that's the bottom line. The bottom line is not me. The bottom line is God. God is good. God helps. God listens. Right? When God forbid there's any troubles or difficulties, then God is always our help. He's our fortress. He's our certainty. Right? No matter what happens. And the Jewish people have had a full measure, overflowing measure of difficulties, and nevertheless they have always believed in God, and that belief is fostered, strengthened by speech, saying the words of the Torah. And that's what's saved the Jews all through all of the generations, having the proper idea of what God is, having the proper conception of how close God is and how far God is, and how God can creates us and loves us. But all these thoughts are only thoughts. When all of a sudden there comes difficult times or disappointing times or big lust or a big temptation or something like that, take a little bribery, something you're worried about what people think about you. So all of a sudden, off comes the kippah, and off comes the tzitzis, and off comes the beard, and off comes the shirt, off comes the pants, and you're just all of a sudden, right? You're just a person. What happened to all these ideas? That's for the synagogue. That's a synagogue. Like there was the saying of the secular movement in Judaism. You'll be a Yehudi bebeitecha v'adam b'tzeitecha. You're a Jew in your house, and when you go into the street, then you're a person like everybody else. Be normal. So how can we preserve this faith in God and this connection to God, this awareness of God, and the love of God, and the awe of God, and the trust in God? How? By saying the words of Torah. And that enables us, even though nothing is 100% certain, but that enables us to hold on to this faith of God, that faith in God is what's held the Jewish people together through all these thousands of years of difficulties and problems and tortures and so now we have thought and speech. And then afterwards, what does it say in the sentence? It says, that's talking about thought. Mitzvotai tishmu, that's talking about speech. And you should do them. What does it mean? Asitam otam means zeh ma'aseh shu inyan hamshachas elokus mibechinas soviv kol min, by means of a ma'aseh. This means drawing down the essence of God. What's the essence of God? This is what's called the aspect of God that surrounds all the worlds. What it is, surrounds all the worlds? In simple English, it means surrounding means being beyond and above, and worlds means any definition. This is the aspect of God which defies all definition. This is the aspect of God that creates all being constantly, and everything is the same. It's all pure creation. God creates the spiritual worlds, the upper world. Everything by God is the same. This is the essence of God, so to speak. This is drawn down by our deeds when we actually do the commandments. Like it says, lo midrash ikar, not learning and thinking and speaking. That's the main thing of lamaisa, the deed. There's a person that talks about the Torah and talks about God and believes in God and explains God and can sing songs about God and knows the whole Torah by heart, and he can say all the words of the Torah, the whole Talmud, but he doesn't do the commandments. He missed the whole point of Judaism. It's like parents that tell their children how much they love them, and they read all these books about psychiatry and psychology and family and everything, and they don't feed their kids. They don't feed them. And they say logically, why should I feed my kids? You know what happens when you feed your children? They go to the bathroom. It's just disgusting. It's terrible. Right? When you don't feed them, they're so beautiful, they become all quiet and they're so nice. Once in a while they cry a little bit. Okay, what are you going to do? People cry, but then they get weak and they don't cry. That's wonderful, and they're so pure and they're so pristine. I mean, that's really sick. That is really a truly sick person. He says, but what I give classes, I'm a professor in child psychology and peace in the home and how important it is to have love and respect in the home and the siblings, and he knows Adler and knows all these things. Wonderful, all the ideas about, but he doesn't feed his kids. He doesn't feed them. That's just insane. Well, it's the same thing, a person that learns the Torah and he knows the Torah and he can speak the Torah and he knows the whole sentences of the Torah, but he doesn't do the commandments. Because the main thing is the main thing is deed. Omer Azal, the rabbi say, Gadol Talmud, the whole greatness, the whole point of learning the Torah is shemevi lemaisa, that it brings to the deed, to doing the actual commandments. Michlal, that implies that hamaisa weikar, the whole reason that there is Torah is only to do the commandments. The deeds are the main thing. Hatachlit, and that's the goal, that's the point. Because is impossible to draw godliness into the world, and that's the job of the Jewish people, is to make the world transparent, to reveal the truth, to draw godliness into the world from this level, the essence of God. We call here we're calling it Sovev Kolam, the aspect of God that surrounds all the worlds. The other aspect of God called Mamali Kolam, that's spiritual. Here we're talking about drawing God actually into the physical world. You can't do that by means of any ideas. You cannot possibly grasp in any way. It's ridiculous to say that you can. God is so great, I can't understand him. It brings in the Tanya, that's like saying some idea in mathematics is so deep and so high, I couldn't grab it with two hands. I tried with both of my hands. I brought a big bag. I couldn't grab the idea. I brought a ladder to the university. I climbed up on the ladder to understand high mathematics, and I had this big bag to grab onto it. I couldn't grab it. But that's ridiculous. You can't grab ideas with a bag. The same thing is you can't grab God with ideas. Ideas are not the proper vessel. Your mind is not the proper vessel to grab God. You can't grab God. It says no thought can grasp him. The power of thought and speech to lace machshavat tefisa, because no thought can possibly grasp God at all. Even asagos elyonim, even the upper thoughts of God, the highest, even the upper angels, they cannot grasp God. The only way that the essence of God can be connected to is by means of, a deed. The kiyum mitzvahs, and doing the commandments. And that's why all these other religions in the world, they stress going to heaven, because they don't believe that you can reveal God in this world. And if you can, maybe some miracles or something, but that's not the point. The point of the miracles is only to get you to believe in the miracle maker, and he's going to get you into heaven. What Judaism says the opposite. Judaism says, the Rambam brings down, Maimonides, that all the miracles, amazing miracles that Moses did, he fed the Jews in the desert 40 years, 3 million Jews. By the merit of Moses, they got food and water. There's no even religion that made up such a crazy story. Maybe one time they make up a story. He took 10 loaves of bread and made 1,000 loaves of bread. Right? Elijah the prophet also did that. Moses took nothing and he brought manna down from heaven for 40 years. 40 years, and water came from a rock constantly every day. That's pretty big. It says all of these miracles was not in order to make them believe in God, and it was only just to help the Jews. That's all. They needed water, came water from a rock. They needed protection. Right? They were just in order to help the Jews. The Rambam brings, magicians could have done the same thing. Why did the Jews believe in God? It says because they got the commandments. They heard God speaking to Moses and saying, this is what you should say to the Jewish people. And Moses gave the Jewish people commandments. And the opposite is also true. It says that in the time that the Jewish people worshiped the golden calf, they still believed in God. They believed in God. They just thought this is the way to express our belief. In other words, their beliefs were okay and everything. What was bad? Their deeds. That was the main thing. This is the main thing, is doing the commandments. The commandments reveal how precious and wonderful and holy this physical world is, much, much incomparably than the upper world. The upper worlds are just this aspect of God, which is called how God fills the worlds. This world, we can draw this in this world, physical, you draw down the essence of God. So viv kol olmin. Like it says, like it says, it's enough for a wise person with just a little motion. There's some things that you can think, that you can express with a wink of an eye, with a look of something, with a motion that you can't express with wisdom. You can't express with ideas, speaking. This is like the example of a person that is not able to speak. Because in front of his friend, what should he do? By means of romezlo patenua kolshu, by a little bit of a movement, right? Sometimes you say to a person, tell me, are you serious? Can you explain, please, why is it you love God? And you look at the person, you see he's crying. You see, oh, wow, this person really is serious. So you see, sometimes there's ideas that are so deep, so real, you can't express them. And then there's people who are actors, right? Actors, they know how to imitate these motions and facial movements and things like that. So you really believe that they're real. But the main thing is the deed. So it is also by means of what we do, and we make an arousal from below. There has to be an arousal from above. And there's a lot of blessings that come down into this world that depend on what we do. In other words, according to what we do, God reacts. That's a very basic principle of Judaism that Chassidut stresses very strongly. That God reacts to what we do. The essence of God we're talking about reacts to what we do. If we, with our heart, God reacts with our words, God reacts, but by means of deeds, the moment doing them, nirmaz is hinted at, v'nimshach milamayla mayla, the highest levels, umimakom gavoa yoter, and the highest of possible aspects of God, ke'ayin remez, something like we said, like a hint, a wink of an eye, a movement of the face. The deed that speaks, action speaks louder than words, like we said. By means of our actions, as God reacts, by our actions that speak louder than words and certainly louder than thoughts, as the revelation of God in this world is also greater than the spiritual, which is like God's thought and God's speech. Come on, Maisa Tzedakah. For instance, take an example, charity. Now you have to see this here. You have to have faith. You understand? You have to have faith to believe that God is revealing Himself. Also, we have to read another thing. God revealing Himself in the world does not mean that He has to do big miracles, like bring money from heaven, or like we read about with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, or suddenly everybody's face starts glowing and they have halos or whatever, they're floating around the world. Revealing godliness in the world. Here we see that the Jewish people, they received all these miracles getting out of Egypt and the Torah, and it didn't really help. It didn't really change them at all. Because the godliness was around them, but it wasn't, so to speak, it didn't permeate them. It was a spiritual feeling that they had. To reveal the essence of God means that everything becomes elevated. In the beginning, what it means, everything becomes elevated, that the world simply becomes a healthy world. If we think about it for one moment, the biggest example of this is the existence of the Jewish people. The existence of the Jewish people. We've had enemies that have been trying to destroy Judaism from outside and from inside, especially to this very day. Maybe now it's even stronger than ever. Because we have this, our own country, and we let all of the foreign powers and ideas and forces, and we're afraid of what the word they say. Now we're in the biggest exile that could possibly be. Right? And the fact that God protects us and He watches us, I hate to keep repeating this over and over again, but 4 years ago, 5.5 years, the Arabs actually shot 4,500 missiles at us. They shot from the land we gave them, right here in Israel. And the army did nothing. There were 3 boys that they kidnapped. They thought they killed them. Really, they killed them immediately. And they kidnapped them. The whole world all of a sudden got interested in these 3 Jewish boys. They could care less about the Jews. They killed millions of Jews. Who cares if they killed? All of a sudden, these 3 boys, everybody got interested in them, and they showed their faces, and then the army started to work. But before that, they shot 4,500 missiles, and the only one protecting us was God. Right? And if you ask the Israeli media, they say, "What are you talking about? We had the Iron Dome, right? That did the job." What did it do? The Iron Dome stopped 700 of the 4,500 missiles. There's 3,800 missiles unaccounted for. And let's say they're terrible shots. 3,000 of the 3,800 they missed. So we got 800 missiles that got to the point. And let's say they didn't get to the point. Half of them didn't work. Half of them were this. So you had 400. All right, let's narrow it down. You have 400. You had 100 missiles. Right? If Canada would shoot 1 missile into America, that would be the end of it. Right? Especially if some sort of a weird fringe group would shoot 1 missile from Harlem into Brooklyn or something like that, there would be world. That would be it. They would go on and wipe a missile to shoot. Who would shoot? They stopped 4,500 missiles. The only one protecting us was God, and He's protecting us now. And miracles. I mean, there's no miracles. I think, and this has been going on for 2,000 years. It's just now that we have the land of Israel, it's even worse. Now we do have our army and we do have our protection, and they don't use it. Now we see big miracles, right? I think this is bigger miracles than the fact that the Jews still exist after the expulsion from Spain and the Holocaust and everything. I don't know. In any case, we see a proof. It says if we would have had our own army in the Holocaust, it wouldn't have happened. Here, there's a Holocaust going on, and we have our army, and it's happening. It's happening, and God is just protecting us the most. So that's an example of the revelation of Soviv called Olmim in the world. And it's a result of the commandments that people do, the Jews do. So we see, and if you look at your own personal life, you can see every single moment that this is the way it is. One big problem that we have is we don't want to accept these miracles. And we make problems for ourselves. This what is happening in Israel with the government. The government doesn't, they're afraid of this. That's happening with me too, me myself. Right? The big rabbi, the big teacher, I'm spouting off, telling about everything, but I do the same thing. Right? The world has an effect on me, and I don't admit it. I cover it over. Right? A little bit lazy, a little bit this, a little bit that. What's going on out there is just a simon for what's going on inside of me. And the thing that's protecting me is the fact that I and other Jews do commandments. By means of this draws down from the highest of highest sources. And this is like a sort of, like we said, like a person that makes a little sort of a motion, right? A little facial thing, and that brings out the essence of the person. So, for instance, charity, by means of giving life to another person, doing the commandment of charity, then this is like a little hint to God, the makor kol hashpos, that comes down and God reacts from his essence. God gets the point. Our deeds speak louder than our words and even our thoughts. Of course, you have to have the proper thoughts and you have to have the proper words also. But we're just saying you have to have all three. But the most powerful of all is the deed. The Canaan, so all the commandments, afilu mitzvahs Talmud Torah, even the mitzvah of learning Torah, that you speak the words of Torah that we said before. The fact that you learn Torah, we said that preserves and protects your good thoughts and intentions. But there's also moving your lips. The thing of learning the Torah, though, is moving your lips is not really considered to be true deed. It's, for instance, if a person speaks something, if it's speaking, right, it's not punishable in court for this. If you lie to someone and trick someone, of course, you have to pay them back. But generally speaking is not considered to be deed. That's what it says. It says that's what it says. That the action of charity brings peace. Because peace comes from the highest of sources. What is peace? Peace is above all opposites. And it unites all opposites. Ki inyan shalom, the whole idea of peace is shemachaber shtei hafachim, that it unites two opposites, for oseh shalom b'neim, and it makes peace between them. Similarly, it is impossible la'olamos, for the worlds, l'kabel shafa, to receive any sort of a blessing from God. Shehu muvdal, which God is. What's two opposites? What's the two biggest opposites you can possibly have? What's the two biggest opposites there can possibly be? What? Two opposites. The biggest opposites there can possibly be is God and the creation. The creator and the creation. That's the biggest opposite. You can't find bigger opposites than that. God is totally separate from the world, minakatzeh. God is totally unlimited in every single aspect of being unlimited. And the world is totally limited in every aspect of being limited. There's no bigger difference than that. And what joins them together? Shalom, peace. And that's what it says in the beginning of our Torah portion. V'natati shalom ba'aretz, I will give peace in the land. Ki malchutcha malchut kol olamim, because God's kingship, this is the kingship of all. God creates all the worlds. As infinite as God is, and his opposite is from the world, and unlike, but he's creating the world. That's part of his infiniteness, infinity. If you say that God is relegated to be spiritual, he has to be out of the world, then you're limiting him. You're saying one place he's not is here. God is everywhere. He creates everything constantly. He's not limited to being unlimited. God can also make the world. And he does make the world. Just he gave the Torah to tell us what to do with the world. But you can't worship the sun or the moon or people or things like that, because God said you can only worship the God that took you out, the Jews out of Egypt. That's in the Torah. But if there wasn't the Torah, you could worship anything you want to. Why not? Why not? Why not? Everything is godly. The Torah tells us not. But the idea of drawing this down and revealing why God makes these differences in the world and why He's creating the world, that's through the Jewish people doing deed, action. That's what makes peace in the world. That's what it says, that God did not find a vessel holding blessing for the Jews except for peace. When we make peace in this world, then that makes peace with God. But it has to be a true peace. What does it mean, peace? Doing the commandments. The commandments are they themselves, are the uniting of the infinite essence of God with His physical world. That's what the commandments are. This draws down life, godliness in the world. Okay, let's not forget the original question that we asked, and that's the question is, how can it say after all of these curses, it says, and these are the commandments and laws and statutes that God commanded us, when it's after a bunch of curses? There's no laws and commandments and everything. What does it mean? Remember, that was the original question we had. Right after these 49 curses, it says these are the laws and the statutes and the directives that God gave to the Jewish people, between Him and the Jewish people. What does it mean? So he said, okay, learning the Torah, doing the commandments, thinking about God, these are essential, but actually doing the commandments are the most important. That's the whole idea of the blessings which are in the Torah. All the blessings, that's how this week's Torah portion starts off, with blessings. Come on, there are Moshiach, for instance, one of the blessings in the beginning of this week's Torah portion. You will eat your bread and be satisfied. Perish. You will eat bread and you will be satisfied. What does it mean you will be satisfied? You will be satisfied with godliness. Let's see. Like it says, Uz v'chedva b'makomo. That's how we start off this week's Torah portion, right? With these blessings. That's how we start off our prayers in the morning. We say, Uz v'chedva b'makomo. When God is revealed in the world, what is there in the world? Happiness, joy. Like we said, peace. Peace doesn't mean that you're neutralized, that you sit on a mountain and you don't care about the cold, you don't care about your body, and you don't care about the world. That's peace. And in a way, it's peace. It's like death. It's like being dead. It's like being a plant or something. That's not peace. Right? Peace. Peace means really happiness. Happiness. Peace means that you're not bothered by negative things, but that enables you and it activates you to, yes, be connected to positive things, and positive things make you happy. Peace. When there's peace, for instance, there's no greater peace than a person having a family and all the children get along. That's such a wonderful, I don't know if there's any blessing greater than that in the world. But there's no happiness greater than that in the world. Right? People go to these wild parties and they take drugs and they feel happy and they're jumping around. That's not really happiness. That's not really happiness. It's just wildness, confusion. Right? You're just confused and your mind is confused. So you're just, here you are. I'm just in the middle of this confusion. What me worry, like it says, just jumping around. That's not happiness. That's not peace. And that's not peace. What is happiness? Happiness and peace, that's harmony. Harmony. A person that has a family, right? As people that don't have families, people should. It's a very, how do you say? People long to have families. They do anything to have children. To have children, human beings. What's more precious than having human beings? If you have a family, and there's children, and there's peace in the family, then that's wonderful. Why? Because then each and every one can express his individuality and his uniqueness and his potential, and there can be harmony between them. And it says that two people can lift up a burden more than, than 5 people. What is it? 5 people, 6. 2 people lifting one burden, they can do more if they come together. Then it's like, if they come together, then it's like 3 people. If they're separate, then each one can only lift up, let's say, each one can lift up 50 pounds. If they join together, they can lift up 150 pounds. They lift up together. Then there's happiness. It says that's what it means. There's happiness, and when you reveal God in the world, there's happiness. Happiness, a person feels happy, healthy, happy, and he can reveal who he is. A person can reveal who they are. That's the blessings. What are the curses? Curses, when there is no revelation of God, they prevent a person from serving God. There's the external. The Jewish people rose up in God's thought. So let's take an example. I mean, let me go. Right, the biggest blessing is a person has a family and there's peace in the family and everybody has their unique. That's the biggest. Take a person like this, right? A father, a mother, and say, yeah, well, wonderful family of, oh yes, isn't it just such a blessing from God? How would you like a good shot of heroin? Huh? You'll really feel good. You'll feel infinitely better than any feeling you can possibly feel in the world. Heroin, you will really enjoy this. Are you nuts? Get out of here. I'm going to call the police. Who are you? I'm going to call. You stay right here. I'm going to call the police. You can't do this. You're destroying the lives of people. What are you talking about destroying? This is fun. This is good. Right? This is really good. To take away your family just so you'll have some sort of pleasure. This is the biggest pleasure in the whole world, is to be able to express your true potential and make as many people as possible that can express their potential. It says to remove this ability to reveal your potential, this is a curse. This is a curse. The absence of the revelation of God, meaning, peace, love, blessing, no matter how much fun you have, how much good it is, that's called a curse. Israel, because the Jewish people alone, they rose up in God's thought. There's no disturbance in the upper worlds at all. But what do the Jews want? The essence of a Jewish soul is to cling to the essence of God, true reality. True reality. And the Jewish people, they are believers, the sons of believers. And what does God want? That we should be in this world and make this world holy. That's what true happiness and blessing is. The Jews, in their source, the soul as it is up in the heaven, there's no curses up there, just godliness. And the fact is, in this physical world, there's all these problems and difficulties. But the soul, before it comes into the body, it's wonderful, right? In the future, it's all these curses are going to turn into be blessings. This whole world comes out to be a big curse because it hides over God. But God put us into this world where it doesn't seem there's any blessing, so that we should transform it. That's why we have the commandments, to transform it. And in the future, all of these curses will be transformed to blessings. That's a true blessing. To remove all of these external confusing forces and to what's this, a base? 1 second, 1 minute. Let me see what this is. Okay, I have to look on this. Okay. I think it means that all of the external forces that are clinging to the Jewish people and confusing them and mixing in with them. Itarvum. That's what it says. What does it say? God says, all these curses that I just said, if you just do what I want and you act in this confusing world, you activate the soul that was not confused before it came into the world, you activate this holy temple that's inside of you, then God says, I'll do away with all of the evil, all the confusion, and even more, all these curses I'll put on your enemies. That on Yom Kippur, there's the goat, what's it called, the goat to Azazel. It says he takes all the sins of the Jewish people. The Sa'ir, this goat, it says the goat, Sa'ir, this represents Esav. Esav, it says, is Ish Sa'ir, he's a hairy person. Seir also means a goat, and also means that's Esav, the brother of Jacob, that has vowed to make trouble for the Jewish people. That's the exile that we're in now. V'zeu perish inyan kol ha'kalalos, all the curses that really they are blessings on the Jewish people. Why? Because what are the curses? They just cover over what's good. They're just covering over what's good. And in the end, God will take all this covering and he'll turn it around. He'll turn it around to be a blessing. So that was the whole story with why Yitzchak, the father of Jacob and Esav, why he wanted to bless Esav. He thought that he could turn him around right then. He gave him a big blessing and turn him around. And Yaakov he realized really it was Rivka, his mother, revealed it had to take a long time. But eventually all these curses, even Esav himself, will transform to be blessings. And the biggest klala of all of them, the biggest curse of all these curses is not mentioned here. The biggest curse is mentioned in the 98 curses, which is in Parshas Kitavo, in the book of Deuteronomy. It says, Agir asher b'kirbecha, it says that the non-Jew, which is among you, will rise up above you and rule you. The non-Jew that's among you, he'll be the ruler. This is only referring to the external forces, the forces of the world that cling to the Jewish people. That's what it means, Agir b'kirbecha. That's what it means, the non-Jew, which is among you, say the non-Jew, which is inside of you. So on one hand, it means the non-Jew inside of you. On the other hand, it means the one that is dwelling among you. What's that? That's the Shekhinah. That's God's presence. He's also Ger. God's presence is also living among us. Right? God, it says that when the Jews went into exile, that the Shekhinah, God's presence went with them. God went into Babylon with them. God went into Rome with them. God. That from this spark of godliness, which is an exile inside of us, that's the Ger, Asher B'kirbecha. From this comes the hidden love that every single Jew has, that this is an exile inside of our body. And when this becomes, why is it called a Ger? It's called a dweller. But Oretz, it's a Eretz Lo. It's a living in a strange land. What is it? This is the spark of godliness which enlivens our soul, like it says, Golos Shekhinah, like it says that wherever the Jews go, that God's presence is with them. So inside of this curse, which is the exile and all this confusion, there is this blessing, and that's God's presence is inside of us. And that's the love that every Jew feels inside of them. It's a miracle that the Jews still exist, and they exist by virtue of this hidden love which is inside of them. And that's the whole idea of the blessing, that we just have to reveal this fact of God's presence inside of us. Says the Rebbe, the main way to reveal this is by the commandments, as we will talk about tomorrow, God willing, at 8:15. And now let's finish the Sikha that we started off. 1 second. Here we go.